welcome. We appreciate you, and we will get started. This is a topic that came to us from many of you, an update not just on perhaps one particular garden, but park improvement projects in general. Today's focus is on Alcazar Garden. It really talks about an array of, I'd say, factors of many projects. So it's got a really great example of how we do our work and how we do it collaboratively. And I'm thrilled that we were able to secure all three of these experts at this time. Everyone's schedules seem to be getting busy, even though many of them are via Zoom. So I'd like to welcome Nancy Carroll Carter. Round of applause for Nancy, Lucy Warren, and our very own Jackie Higgins. So thank you three for being here today, and we look forward to learning more from each of you about the significance of the Balboa Park's historic landscapes and what's been happening behind the scenes. So like I said, we're going to begin with Alcazar Garden, which is certainly one of the park's most iconic and historic landscapes. Nancy, you've done a lot of research on this particular garden, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about its origin and what makes it unique.
I can, and I'm going to do that with the PowerPoint.
Great.
Are you seeing that?
No.
Oops.
Not yet. Do you need help troubleshooting?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe I didn't click what I needed to click. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, here we go.
Great. Here we go.
All right. So today's Alcazar Garden was first known as Montezuma Garden. It was created for the 1915 Panama, California Exposition, and it was supposed to be a place of quiet retreat from all the hustle and bustle of the exposition crowds. This vintage postcard shows how the surround of streetlights made the garden also a favorite place for an evening stroll. Looking down from the California Tower, elements of the 1915 formal Spanish garden design are revealed. The garden is surrounded by trees. This was not a parking lot, it was a eucalyptus forest. And the trees provide a sense of privacy and protection. And you can see that the layout of the garden is very geometric and also symmetrical. In 1935, the master architect of that exposition, Richard Requa, redesigned and renamed this garden. His inspiration was the Moorish-style Royal Alcazar Gardens of Seville in southern Spain. Again, looking down from the California Tower, we can see Requa's simplified layout. There's still a geometric design and it is still symmetrical, but it's got this very strong dominant central axis with these two strong axes. Requa added tile benches and two fountains to the garden, very much in the Moorish design tradition of judiciously using water as a garden adornment. Take note in this slide of this large shaded area from the large tree that's growing on that side. You're going to hear more about this issue in another presentation. This is a 1935 postcard of Alcazar Garden. We know very little about how this garden was planted throughout the exposition, but we do know that on opening day, 10,000 pansies were blooming in Alcazar Garden. Notice that the garden is still sheltered with surrounding trees and that it has a very open look. And this openness is achieved by low plantings as shown in this more contemporary photograph of the garden. This is a deliberate design choice that allows anyone in the garden to easily survey their surroundings, increasing the feeling of comfort and safety within the garden. Well, the restful atmosphere of Alcazar Garden invites visitors to stay a while, perhaps just to listen to the fountains, to read their book, or to enjoy a quiet conversation with a friend, or perhaps to study more closely some of the details of the garden, such as the individual plants that are growing and the colorful designs of the California tile. Some visitors might, for the first time, notice that the two garden fountains, which appear to be twins, are actually of completely different designs. Someone might even wonder why a Moorish garden has a Greek-inspired Doric pergola at one end. Well, much is revealed on the garden's interpretive sign. It summarizes the long landscape heritage represented in this garden and states that Alcazar Garden is unique in all of Southern California. I think I would go beyond that. There are few, if any, public gardens in the United States that compare to our very special Alcazar Garden. Thanks.
Thanks, Nancy. So I would love to hear from Lucy Warren. As a master gardener, you're well familiar with the challenges of maintaining public gardens. And I'm wondering what you think is the key to success in keeping this garden in top shape moving forward.
Okay, the Alcazar Garden really is a wonderful example because it's one of the most intensive maintenance gardens in the entire park. The plantings are changed out seasonally, and that requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of staff time. And flowers, once they bloom, then they're dead. So each season you have a time when the garden's in its peak, and the frequency of changing out toward the end of each cycle, things can become a little problematic and not as gorgeous as they were, not when they were first put in, because the plants were small. You have this constant growing and changing of the plants. The gardens are definitely ephemeral. The garden has some challenges as well, because one side of it is extremely shady and the other side has the full sun. And this again is kind of a nightmare for the park maintenance staff. They've had help over the years. A number of years ago, the Rotary helped both with the infrastructure with the garden and in planting for the centennial. Rotary 33. Pat Coy, who's a wonderful landscape architect, did the designs for the garden, and he did a little more contemporary design with the plants, with the garden, which was really quite fun for that period of time. But again, it's very difficult for the staff to keep that up. The centennial was a good key time for the gardens in the park. There were no additional fundings that were added to the maintenance, and we invited a number of organizations throughout San Diego to join the Friends Adopt a Plot program and upgrade many of the gardens in the park. We were also having water issues. So the new gardens that were going into the park, we wanted to be colorful, but also low water use. And some of them have just been maintained spectacularly. The garden behind the Timken was designed by the San Diego Horticultural Society and used many plants that have a lot of color in their leaf and their form. And that has been a very good garden as an example to see how the public can participate in Balboa Park. Coastal Sage had adopted a very intensive, labor-intensive garden at the base of the lily pond. And I think that that's probably one of the most photographed sites in the entire park. But they have someone who until the current period of time, they had someone who would come and maintain that relatively small area. It is a pretty big garden, but relatively small area in the park every week. So that's a lot of labor that was saved from the park maintenance staff. We couldn't have that kind of garden unless someone outside of the park staff was working on it. So I'm really excited. Jackie has proposed, and it'll be a good complement to the Adopt a Plot program. People love to plant plants, but then they don't like weeding quite so much. They don't like deadheading quite so much. And Jackie's going to be creating a program of people, of volunteers who that is something that they like to do. They like to keep things looking good, and that will be available. She can talk more about it, but I'm very excited about that program. Over the time that the park has been closed, because we have not had people interfering with the gardens, the staff of the park has done a tremendous job in upgrading and maintaining the gardens that aren't being trampled. So maintenance is really a key to keeping the park beautiful, and everything that our organizations can do to help that really benefits the public and visitors. So Jackie, maybe you'd like to talk to some of the programs that you're working on.
Yeah, Jackie, we had talked a little bit about how Alcazar is kind of a model for park improvement projects. And I'm wondering, you know, a number of us saw kind of what was happening in the garden before some recent renovations with, you know, peeling paint and fountains in disrepair and poor planting pattern or materials. What was your approach to this particular project as far as the improvement efforts? And what were some of your biggest challenges and successes?
Our initial approach was to not reinvent the wheel. We always try to be very efficient with the resources that we have. I think, you know, there was a lot of different conversations that were going on at one time. And one of the first conversations was around looking into existing conditions and just putting together kind of a existing conditions report and what needs to be done. And about that same time, we had the opportunity to apply for the Johanna Favreau Foundation grant, which we did apply for. And we luckily were awarded that, and then we were able to retain Vicki Estrada. And the reason we actually partnered with Vicki on the proposal for that grant because we didn't want to reinvent the wheels. She's already done all the restoration plans. So, you know, because it is a historic landmark garden, we're not redesigning anything. So it's been done once. So, you know, she already had all the information that we needed, and she was able to quickly put together a report, go out, do an inventory and analysis, and tell us what needed to be done. So we look to always be efficient with what we're doing because, you know, there's so much going on in the park and so much need. Do you guys want me to share those slides that I shared at the Park Improvement Committee meeting? Because I think there are some people that are on this that have not seen those yet. So I think I'm going to go ahead and share those real quick. Are you guys seeing the PDF of the Alcazar Garden?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, cool. I've got two screens here, so I'm not sure which one I picked up. So the first thing that was addressed was, as Nancy mentioned in her slides, the shade from the big ficus tree on the south side. That does, you know, over the years, it is a gorgeous tree and it has filled out and done wonderfully in that area. However, it does create that microclimate on the south side for the bedding plants that are below it, so that it has become a challenge, as Lucy mentioned, and about maintenance in the garden and planting and putting together the planting pallets for this garden. So that was the first thing that was addressed, was the thinning out and pruning of that gorgeous tree. And as some of you know that have walked this garden many times, the sidewalks were being uplifted by the roots of the ficus tree in some areas as much as 6 inches. And, you know, Parks and Rec does their best to be able to like shave down the uplifting of the sidewalks, but at some point, you know, you got to go in and just dig it out, take out the roots, and encourage the roots to go in a different direction. So that was the next thing that was addressed. Then there was tremendous cracking and in other areas of the garden. So around both of the fountains, the concrete was removed and then re-poured and hand seeded. So this is just some slides of in progress. There's Morgan, he was the man on the ground with this project. He was there. This is during the closure. So keep in mind during this project, Central Mesa was completely closed, which actually allowed us to do this work much quicker than we would have been able to if the park was open. And Audrey Tamayo was also coordinating this virtually. So she was coordinating all the vendors and scheduling everything as well. So I gotta give credit to Morgan and Audrey for really making this project happen. There's the re-pouring of the concrete. As Sarah alluded to, this, you know, it takes a village to do anything in Balboa Park, as you guys know. And we worked with Jim Hughes, because he had mentioned that they had offered to paint the archways and the pergola. So Jim Hughes rallied his troops with Friends of Balboa Park and Rotary 33, and they repainted both of the archways and the pergola. And we looked back into the specifications for the color on those beautiful vases that are in front of the pergola. And it turns out the blue is actually meant to be the same blue that's in the color of the tile. So the new painting on the pergola vases really pulls that Moorish tile colors out from the fountains, which is super cool. And then there was, after the flat work was finished, we did address a lot of the vandalism that had happened to the tile work as well. And one of the last things that we did was the upgrade to the lighting. So we worked with FX Luminaire and Site One, and they gave us a mighty discount on the pathway lighting. So as you can see, the new lighting, which is like top-notch lighting, the lighting is specifically has a pattern on the pathway now instead of just kind of like going up into the shrubbery. So it looks really beautiful out there in the evening. So if you haven't had a chance to go walk it, please do. It's very magical. And so I just wanted to give a shout out. This really was a true collaboration. There was, you know, funding from the Favreau Foundation and Connie Jameson. I want to give a shout out to Connie Jameson because she also, when I said that there were a few conversations going on at the very beginning, Connie came to the table and she said, if the city steps up, I will step up. And the city stepped up first with fixing the plumbing to the fountains. And so Connie's generous donation helped all the rest of this happen. Rancho Santa Fe Garden Club was specifically interested in the lighting, and that's where their funds were put forward. And then of course, just the scheduling and the collaboration of the teamwork with the City Parks and Rec, the Conservancy, Rotary, Friends of Balboa Park, Committee of 100. I'm sorry, I meant to mention that Committee of 100, you know, they're always thinking ahead. So the last time there was a restoration done and they had tile work fabricated, they had a whole bunch of extra tiles produced, and they donated those tiles to us to be able to do all the tile work that was done recently. And
Jackie, Pam asks, do we know who was behind the vandalism of the tiles? And that can that be prevented going forward?
there are cameras that have been adjusted so that we can try to help, you know, do that. That's something I'm working with the rangers on. So John Anderson was working with me on that, and now we're working with Kyle on that as well. So there is security lighting and cameras out there. And then, of course, a shout out to Vicky Estrada and her team, because they really helped us with the foundational plans for this. And they continue to help work with us on the planting plans and guidelines and templates, so that, you know, as we see, you know, sometimes the city staff is, you know, every 3 to 4 years, they get promotions and move on. And so that it'll be nice to have these planting guidelines that Nancy talked about earlier, so that we can assure that this garden is always planted and maintained in with the design it is intended to have. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Jackie, you know, one of the things we noticed when putting together a report on this is that Alcazar Garden is certainly a model of collaborative revitalization. And there's a couple of other projects in motion right now that show kind of different models of either envisioning or restoration or enhancement. One of them is the 1935 Cactus Garden. And I'm wondering if the panel wants to mention anything about that project as a different model for improvement.
Yeah, you know, we have a couple, you know, different ways that we approach projects depending on the size of the project and stakeholders involved. And the Cactus Garden, we had one particular donor that was really interested in seeing that garden rehabilitated. And the way we were able to approach that, unlike Alcazar Garden, we had to get a right of entry to do that work. And that did take, that was one of the challenges, is getting the rights of entries to come in and do construction work. So that process with the city took us almost a year with Alcazar Garden. With the Cactus Garden, because we worked with Urban Corps and California Conservation Corps, we were able to do trail work right away through the rangers, because it wasn't your typical contractor. They're a training crews.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know, I realize not everyone knows maybe about that garden, which is located, people confuse it often with the Desert Garden, which is next to the Rose Garden. Nancy, you probably have something to share about the significance of that Cactus Garden.
Well, I've been thrilled by the work on that Cactus Garden, and I always just think that Kate Sessions would be so happy if she knew this was happening. Looking back, Kate Sessions proposed a cactus garden for Balboa, for the city park, as it was then called, in 1889. So this was a very old idea of hers. And of course, it wasn't until 1935 that the garden became a reality. And that garden benefited from donations from across the country. People sent their personal collections of cactus, and places, Desert Gardens in Arizona donated cactus. Cactus was donated from the Huntington. So we really had this wonderful collection put together through the perseverance of Kate Sessions and the generosity of a lot of donors. And because of the park's shortages of staffing and perhaps maybe some lack of expertise over the years, that garden really was allowed to decline. So I think it's very exciting that it is again coming back with some real beautiful plants and some much needed maintenance.
Great. Lucy, do you have anything to add about Desert Garden or the Cactus Garden? Because we have one more.
No, I think it's wonderful that it's getting attention now. We have had a couple of groups that have been interested from time to time, but have not either had the means or, you know, the full organizational support to help with that. So, you know, having a great donor is fantastic. And, you know, all the gardens need help, whichever model we use.
Yeah. Yeah, the maintenance is really critical to that. Jackie, do you want to be in on that?
Yeah, and Lucy had alluded to the fact that we are working on what we're calling garden stewards, similar to what we did with the tree stewards, but these garden stewards will be able to you know, Lucy mentioned, you know, a lot of people want to do the planting, but they don't want to do the weeding and the maintenance. Well, we have a whole bunch of people on the waiting list to do weeding and maintenance, which is super exciting for those of us that are geeky about that kind of stuff. And we officially got the executed right of entry today. So it's been signed off by the city attorney, and we have the legal right of entry now to train these garden stewards to go out and help maintain all the gardens of the whole park, all 1,200 acres. So this right of entry will really help us to enhance all the gardens of the park. I'm super excited about that. This has been about 10 months in the works, and Lucy, we did it.
I'm so excited. I have wanted this program for so long.
So,
Great. That's incredible news, Jackie. It's fun to be able to share it on this call. And I love you have the paperwork to prove it.
Megan just delivered it like an hour ago. I didn't know it was
Wow.
coming today, so
Yeah,
just
no,
happened.
I love that. It's such a, to be able to have that in hand is so tangible, and I know how hard it is to get that. So I don't know, I think everyone's thrilled. And as Dylan mentioned on the chat, we know there's already a wait list. And as you said, there are people who love to weed. So we're thrilled.
So another bonus of this ROE, just real quick, is it is a construction right of entry. There are some that are like, you know, just observations and you can be in the park doing certain things, but this is a construction right of entry, which also will allow us to hire contractors to do garden construction projects.
Fabulous.
So great. Before we head to Q&A, I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything about the Rose Garden, which is a totally different kind of model. Just high level indication of what's to come there would be nice.
Yeah, so the Rose Garden, we're actually in the we put together a steering committee like we do on many of our park improvement projects, and we worked with Parks and Recreation and the Rose Garden leadership team to put together a conceptual plan of what the next generation Rose Garden will look like. And WRT, who was kind enough to do pro bono work for us, so they donated about $25,000 worth of their time to put together this conceptual plan. So we're in the process of submitting what's called a general development plan revision. So as you know, the Rose Garden is part of the precise plan and the master plan. So in order to actually make renovations to that, we have to amend the general development permit process. So we're going through that process right now. So that, that's another similar but different type of model where we have outside experts actually helping us to put together construction documents and stuff like that to put through the city to get that right to do that project.
Yeah, this is Connie. I know that at the San Diego Foundation, their Balboa Park fund has things specifically set aside for the Rose Garden, so that should help with that project.
Yeah, and that will come in handy in the next step. Now that we've done all the conceptual stuff, now we can move into construction documents, and we will be working with the foundation funds to help move that along.
Excellent. Actually, we can move right into questions. It looks like Pam, Jerry, I think I answered your question about providing the t-shirts or providing volunteers with t-shirts. Working on grants funding right now for all of our volunteer initiatives, but specifically outfitting our volunteers with the right materials. And then Pam is asking, who is the person that's going to head up the new maintenance volunteer effort? Jackie.
That's me. So, but we have a new AmeriCorps VIP fellow that will be joining us in mid-September, and of course Audrey, who was our very first AmeriCorps VIP fellow, who's still with us, and I hope she doesn't leave us ever, because she's amazing. So between the three of us, and of course Lucy, and is Lynn on the call? No, I don't see Lynn.
No, Lynn's not with today.
Yeah, okay. So we have, you know, as again, it's like a collaboration of all the different people, stakeholders that have always been involved with the gardens.
Mhm.
And Nan Sturman is also excited to work with us on that project.
That's great. All right.
This is Connie. I have a question about Alcazar Garden because since I'm invested in it. I don't go there often, but last time somebody said, oh, it was looking beautiful, and about a week later I went over there and it looked like crap. So, but it sounds like that's a perennial problem. You know, they plant plants that, you know, they don't look good, then they look good, then they die. That doesn't sound like a good long range plan.
And that's exactly why we needed these garden stewards. So that's why I'm so excited to get this right of entry, to have the garden stewards as volunteers to be in there to continue to maintain it. Like Lucy said, you know, you need people in there on a weekly basis. And the grounds maintenance people with the city, they have so much on their plate, they can't be at every garden every week.
I think this is going to be a great improvement for that garden, Connie.
What?
Having people to be able to maintain that on a consistent basis is just going to make such a difference, and it's such an important garden.
Good, yeah, because
there's still going to be times when, you know, the plants are declining before you put in the next season plants, but if they're groomed from week to week, it's going to just look a heck of a lot better overall. Yeah. And you know, things will be adjusted. It's a seasonally planted garden, so sometimes it's going to be empty, sometimes it's going to have little plants, sometimes it's going to have a lot of bloom.
So does the city have a regular schedule?
That's what's part of the planting templates and planting guidelines that we're putting together and documenting. So that's what the city horticulturalist, whoever that person may be at any given time, that's what they'll have to go by. So they'll know what to do and when to do it. And the next step is, of course, an endowment. So the city can't just say, oh, we don't have the money to do the plantings. Hopefully in the future, we will have those funds available to make sure it gets maintained and planted when it should.
So shall I just dive in, Sarah?
Sure, Paul.
Nancy and Lucy and Jackie, each one of you was so terrific, and what a joy to see you. This is really a delight. My question is about the Botanical Building. Despite the coronavirus shutdowns of the park from time to time, and the city, states, the nation, and the world, I suppose the Botanical Building project has to move forward at some pace because we have state funding and it has an expiration date. Are we starting work on the gardens that are going to envelop the Botanical Building, the grounds around it? And what kind of schedule are we on for that work?
So I can tell you that we just did the inventory of all the plants that are going to be salvaged and protected in place for the Botanical Building 2 weeks ago. And that was put into the construction documents. So let me give you a little background on where we are with Botanical Building in general. We, donated the 60% construction documents to the city back in December last year. And then they went through the process of redlining and review and revisions. They sent us comments last month. The R&T architect and landscape architect team addressed those comments, sent them back to the city. The city put out a request for qualifications at the end of May. They got, I believe, 5 responses on that, which is actually awesome and incredible because this is such a unique project. We were concerned we wouldn't get too many responses. So the next step is to do interviews with those qualified applicants, and then the full request for proposals is being put out, hopefully, fingers crossed, in a couple months. And then the contract will be awarded. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are with the Botanical Building, but we are in the process of identifying which plants will be salvaged and brought to the city nursery and maintained there during the construction, the reconstruction and restoration project, and then which ones will be protected in place.
I'm particularly interested, in addition to the collection within the building, in what the landscape design might be surrounding the building. Are we working on that as well?
We are, yep. We actually had hired an arborist to do a whole tree protection plan, which was part of the construction documents that were submitted last month to the city for the revisions. And Spurlock is the landscape architect firm that is working on the design of all the gardens around the building as well.
And Jackie, are you having any fun doing this?
I am.
I mean, that matters.
Yeah. That's Audrey. She was just leaving. Sorry. Yeah, no, I mean, it's always awesome to be in the Botanical Building. It's magical,
Yes.
you know. So we're doing the inventory for the plant protection and protect in place and salvage was fun. Because Anson gave us all kinds of information about all the different plants. He's very knowledgeable.
Great. Thanks, Paul, for asking that question. Does anyone else have any questions for the panel? Or for us before we wrap up? I don't want to take everyone's time.
This is Pam. I just want to say how much I appreciated this program. It's short. There's so much more we would like to know, but it's wonderful. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you, Pam. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see all of you.
So great.
I have a question, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Probably basically for you. I actually read on the website a few weeks ago how the park was open, and then my husband and I had to jump the yellow tape and we were kicked out. Just, are there hours now or what's happening?
Sure, that's a great question, Glee. Because the park itself is open for visitors, for recreation, for safe physical distancing, the challenge I think that we're all feeling right now is that most of the museums, you know, aside from the zoo or maybe the Japanese Friendship Garden, are still on orders to stay closed. So those traditional indoor activities that you've come to love are not available right now. But I do know that the food and dining options in the park are alive, and the Prado, in fact, hosted some special dinners over the weekend. Panama 66 is doing some dining options, and so there are still experiences to be had, and it's certainly, you know, the hours of the park typically, you know, it is a 24-hour park, but really, you know, first thing in the morning until the evening are open for visitors, and walks and bikes and picnics and all of that. So I hope you can come down soon.
We will.
Good. All right. Well, if there are not any more questions, I really want to thank everyone for coming today. Give a very special thank you to our panelists for providing their expertise to all of us. Clap. And I do invite the rest of you, if you have an idea or a topic you'd like us to further explore, or, you know, a special guest you'd like to see on our program, let us know. We're building these for you, and we're looking at a monthly schedule. The next one's in August, and we're talking about placemaking. So I look forward to that, and in the meantime, you know how to reach us, and we hope to see you again really soon. Thanks again, everybody.